Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes of honest advice, tips and resources. I'm Trudy J and I'm here with Shah Barrett,
Hello.
Cheryl Phipps
Hi there.
and Wendy Valla.
Hello.
And this week we have an amazing guest, Helen. I'm not going to say your surname.
Scheuerer.
Scheuerer.
Yes.
Scheuerer, I did write it. Oh, see, I did say it. Scheuerer. Who is an Aussie author living in Queenstown, which is in New Zealand. So we are super excited to have you here with us today, Helen. Shah's going to do a quick bio to tell our listeners all about you, and then we're going to dig right into the questions.
Sounds good.
Cool. Okay, so Helen Scheuerer is the YA Fantasy author, which is exciting because I don't think we've actually spoken to a YA Fantasy author like in depth before. So of best-selling novels The Heart of Mist, Reign of Mist and The War of Mist. These books are part of the action-packed trilogy The Oromir Chronicles. The series has been highly praised for its strong, flawed female characters, which I love that, and its action-packed plots. It has often been likened to Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass series and the epic girl power film Wonder Woman. Yay! Helen's love of writing and books led her to pursue a Bachelor of Creative Writing, majoring at the University of Wollongong. See, I got that one pronunciation right. And a Masters of Publishing at the University of Sydney. Now, a full-time author, Helen lives amidst the mountains in New Zealand and is constantly dreaming up new stories. So we're going to put the link to Helen's website in the show notes and everything else that she's done. But welcome, Helen. It's so nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to dig in right away with the questions. No mucking around here in the spa today. I'm trying to pretend like we're on fire and we're on track. So what I really want to know is, like, to start with, is just, can you give us how you got into writing? What made you want to be a writer, and what got you into self-publishing?
Sure. I've been writing since I was a little kid. It's something I've always done and always wanted to do. I guess throughout school, I always excelled at all the English subjects. I was lucky I had some really good English teachers that were very encouraging. And I guess at the end of high school, when it came to, going to uni, the only thing that I thought I could, withstand 3 more years of study for was creative writing. So even though that's sort of a degree where everybody goes, you're not going to get a job out of this, it's just the only thing I could imagine myself doing. I did that. Throughout school and throughout uni, I've always written. When I was younger, I did a series of really terrible kind of Pirates of the Caribbean spin-off novels.
They sound awesome.
Lord
Don't say they were terrible.
They were definitely terrible. But that's something I've always done, and I always wanted to write a book as opposed to short stories and things like that. That's always been the dream. I guess once I'd finished with uni, I did a bunch of copywriting jobs, which I hated, and was still writing on the side. And at some point decided to do the Masters of Publishing, which I loved mainly because it gave you a really good overview of the whole book production process and how the sort of mechanics of publishing worked, which I love all the business side of it stuff as well. And then somewhere in there, this is years ago now. In 2017, well, I think it was 2016, I wrote Heart of Mist, the first draft of that. I did it in NaNoWriMo. And I had some interest from some of the big five in that, because I was running a writing website prior to that. I was connected in the industry enough that I had people reading my blog and things, and that was partly due to doing a Masters of Publishing and going to networking events and stuff, and then also running this other website. I had prior to that, I had a literary fiction novel signed with a publisher in Melbourne, and that process was really eye-opening in terms of just how time-consuming it was, how inefficient the whole traditional publishing system was. and just how bad like the communication was between publisher and author. And so I basically wrote Heart of Mist to sort of have some sort of escape from that experience, because that was real soul sucking. And yeah, then basically after I'd written that, I had one or two people contacting me from the bigger publishers asking if they could read it and stuff. And I kind of went back and forth a few times with them and sort of said, you know, potentially, but how long is this going to take? Because I kind of had in the back of my mind already that I wanted to indie publish. And I think they said that it would take something like 8 weeks just to read the manuscript. And I just went, nah, that's too long. Like, I want to move forward in my career. And also in terms of the creative control and the control over your production schedule and all of that sort of thing, like indie, I think I just had this realization was the way to go for me. So yeah, in 2017, Heart of Mist came out in August. And then by the following January, I quit whatever jobs I was working at the time and went full time.
Wow, that is an amazing story.
Thank you.
It's so cool. That is so cool.
What made you choose YA Fantasy? Like, what was the drew you to that genre?
I think so. When I did like my creative writing degree, we were very much geared towards like classics and literary fiction, and you know that was supposed to be the serious literature. And like, with obviously without intending to, that degree sort of told you that was the more valuable literature, and I was writing that, and that's why I had that contract with the Melbourne publisher. Because I was kind of just told, like, if you want to be taken seriously as a writer, particularly as a female writer, you know, literary fiction is the only way to do it. And then I think somewhere amidst all that, I started reading YA fantasy again, which, you know, I loved growing up. I mean, that's what inspired me to write all those terrible manuscripts when I was like 13. And yeah, I just fell back in love with the genre, and I had this sort of light bulb moment where I'm like, why aren't I writing what I love reading? And yeah, that's kind of then, you know, I had two girlfriends who were wanting to do NaNoWriMo, and I was like, well, I'm going to give this a shot with YA fantasy. And so I did that, and, you know, was able to write, you know, a pretty clunky first draft in a month, but in a month all the same. And so yeah, I kind of realized that that's what I was meant to be doing.
That's awesome. And was it in 2016 you said that you did the NaNoWriMo?
Yeah, it must have been.
Which is, if anybody hasn't heard of that is actually writing a book in a month.
Yeah, sorry, National Novel Writing Month.
Yeah. So it took you, so for example, what did you do then? So did you edit it, and did you look into covers? How did you decide to move forward from there?
I think, I can't remember the timings of things, but I'm sure somewhere in there I did Mark Dawson's self-publishing course 101. So that was a massive investment in myself. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with it, but it's quite an expensive course to buy, but it's probably the most extensive one out there. And so I think in buying that, I sort of committed to the indie publishing path. And that's fantastic in that it gives you sort of this breakdown of the process. And I was lucky enough that I'd done the Masters of Publishing, so I knew the editorial stages. So I did NaNoWriMo, and the manuscript that produced was terrible. You know, you're hammering out words.
Yes.
For that particular book, I did an outline, so I've learnt my lesson. Now I outline. But yeah, so I wrote it, drafted it, and then, you know, went through a self-edit, looking at the bigger picture stuff, like the plot, the characterization, making sure that, yeah, those bigger picture things were in the right place, and that the book started in the right place, and all of that stuff. And then I did a round of beta reading. So the two girls that I'd done NaNoWriMo with, I was lucky enough that they then agreed to beta read. And I also had a couple of girls from the Masters of Publishing that I did beta read as well. And that's incredibly lucky, because I've got two, you know, fellow authors reading it, but also two women who are in the industry who've done all the same editing courses that I've done. You know, and we have a very similar level understanding of the industry, if that makes sense. So yeah, I did that. When it was to the point where I couldn't really improve it anymore myself, then I started researching editors. I got sample edits from maybe 10 different editors before picking one that I really liked. And I also found out that she'd edited a few books that I'd read and really loved. So I had that sort of social proof as well. So I hired her. In previous work that I'd done, I'd worked with a cover designer for other publications who I thought was really talented. So I reached out to her and she agreed to do the covers for the Oromir Chronicles. And it just kind of went from there. After I typeset it myself, and this was before I knew about vellum. Potentially it was before vellum was really around. So kind of taught myself InDesign and gave myself a lot of headaches with that. But yeah, typeset it myself, formatted it myself, and then got a proofreader, did rounds of print proof copies and all of that stuff. And yeah, it was a massive learning curve and a massive undertaking at the time. But yeah, it all came together August 2017, and I had a book launch in a bookstore in Newtown in Sydney, and it hit number 1 on Amazon in a bunch of different categories. And yeah, it did. I can't even remember what my expectations were back then, but it exceeded them, whatever they were.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, I reckon.
So that's the gist of the origin story, I guess.
Yeah. So I want to that's awesome. I want to talk about your covers, and then I want to talk about what you did when you launched. So number 1 is the cover. So did you have an idea what you wanted, or did you just let your designer design it? Like, what did you?
I've always had like this sort of feeling like I don't quite like having people on my covers, which actually in YA fantasy, particularly in independently published YA fantasy, that's a massive selling point to have people on the covers. But I just I like the sort of more typography, embellishments and that classic fantasy vibe. And so that's sort of what I said to my designer. I said that I don't want people. I want there to be a focus on a more illustration style, in terms of embellishments and the typography. And I think that's pretty much what I said to her. I might have given her a bunch of example covers, but I mean, this was so long ago now, I don't really remember much more than that. But that's the sort of gist of what I told her. And then, she sent off a couple of concepts, and then we narrowed them down and then went with that. And then for the following covers, actually one of my best friends from back home, she's a graphic designer. And so I tend to have a bit of a brainstorm with her and what she thought, like, especially in terms of the progression of the colors throughout the series, because it's like a block color on each cover. So yeah, we'd have a bit of a brainstorm, and then I'd create the brief, and then I'd send it to the actual cover designer and go from there.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I mean, I think they're beautiful covers. It was just interesting because they are, like, as you say, no people, very kind of graphic.
Yeah.
But you do see a lot of those sort of covers these days, and I don't know what it was like back in 2017 or whether it was the same.
I think like back then I wasn't necessarily looking at other indie authors as much as I do now. Like, I definitely wasn't as immersed in the industry as I am now. And I mean, this links to your question about like launching it. When I launched Heart of Mist, I was very much sort of styling the launch strategy to mirror a traditionally published book and that launch. And I was using traditionally published books as my comp titles, the traditionally published authors as comp authors. Like even when you read my bio out, Throne of Glass and Wonder Woman, like they're very much traditionally published works. And so, yeah, that was part of my launch strategy. And I think also with the cover, I was trying to position the cover alongside other trad authors rather than indie authors. And that wasn't out of any sort of, stigma against indie publishing or anything like that. I think I wasn't just that aware of the industry back then. And I hadn't read that many indie books to think, oh, this title is a comp title. I had more read, especially having done, you know, creative writing and a master's of publishing. It's all traditional focused.
Yeah.
So anything I learned about indie publishing was through Mark Dawson and my own sort of research and education. So yeah, I've gone off on a ramble then, but that's
No, I understand completely. Yeah.
And have you changed in your marketing since then, based on that? Do you do things differently because of?
Potentially. So it's an interesting question, because the marketing I'm doing at the moment is for a series that isn't out yet. So I've got a book coming out in July, which is the first book in a brand new series. So with the Oromie Chronicles, when the following books were released, I pretty much mirrored what I'd done with Heart of Mist, because it had gone so well and, you know, it had found its readership. Then I just continued to target that readership, that audience, those publications that had given me coverage and stuff. So yeah, I sort of just continued down that path. At the moment, I'm sort of in two minds, and I'm having a combination of imposter syndrome and self-doubt and, you know, all sorts of things going on at the moment. Well, because like, I mean, I haven't launched the first book in a series for 4 years now.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure things have changed since 2017 when I did it last. So I'm trying to do sort of, I guess, a combination of what worked for me before, and then, you know, using the knowledge that I've learned over the last, you know, 3-4 years. You know, I'm experimenting with newsletter swaps, for example. You know, I'm targeting bookstagrammers more than I have before. I'm doing paid promotions and things, which back then I had no idea about, so I didn't do. Yeah, so this year I'm hoping to do a combination of both, but whether or not it's successful, I won't know until, you know, July, August, basically.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I think there's no reason that you have to do one or the other. I mean,
No.
Yeah,
already
exactly.
proven. I think, like when we were initially talking about this, that you making a 6-figure income by publishing annually, which is incredible. I know that Trudy's going to really dig into that, but clearly it worked, Helen. So, you know,
Yes.
I don't think I would be putting that aside, you know,
No.
for.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel, do you?
Yeah.
If it's
Yeah, you know what it's like, especially when you've got like a new book in a new series that nobody's read yet. It's very much like 1 minute I'm like, oh yeah, like how could it not work? It worked 3 years ago and I'm so much, you know, more knowledgeable now. And then the other part of your brain's like, well, you don't know everything, it might fail. And so
you shut that down, that side of the brain down, like lock it away.
Oh man, you just
And
I think we're all like that, aren't we? I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I'm the same, and I, you know, this is my whatever book that I'm publishing next month, and I'm the same. It's just natural. I think it's who we are. It's what makes us who we are.
Yeah.
So Helen, if we could pop back to your launch strategy for the Oromie series and talk a little bit about what you've done, because it's clearly, so you're following along that traditional publishing path. So what kind of stuff did you do to make that work for you?
So I had done the Mark Dawson course, and, you know, that is very big on the importance of reviews from the get-go. Like, you know, they're social proof for your products. You know, if somebody goes to your Amazon page and you've got one review, like, you know, it doesn't look great, which is hard when you're launching a brand new product. But so one part of my launch strategy for Heart of Mist was casting the net as wide as possible in terms of getting reviews. And back then, I don't think Amazon was as strict in terms of its, you know, review policies. Like, you know, I think now you have to have spent $50 within the last 6 months. And back then, I'm not even sure if it was like $100 in the last year, or if it was like not even as much as that. So it was, I'm not going to say it was easy to get Amazon reviews, but it was easier than it is now. And back then I didn't really focus on targeting people who could specifically review on Amazon. Back then, like, book blogs were really big. You know, people, especially in the YA community, like, they love posting their reviews, like, and having their own like review systems with, you know, instead of stars, they have butterflies or something like that. and they love, you know, creating their own graphics and, you know, pull out quotes and things. And so I did a really extensive campaign where I researched, you know, hundreds of book blog websites. And not only that, like I had a particular plugin on Chrome or extension, whatever it's called, where you can determine a site's domain authority. So like how far up in Google they get and stuff like that. So I kind of did this strategy where I had all these different book blogs, but I also prioritized them in terms of how high their DA was and all sorts of things like that. And then basically I sent out hundreds of emails where I said, my name's Helen, I'm publishing this book. And the book had a very professional like media kit that I'd created, you know, that had the cover, which was under embargo, like you couldn't share it, nobody had seen it yet. It had the blurb, it had an excerpt, and it also at the back had like topics, interview questions, guest post ideas. Like, I think one of the good things about this strategy was I did the work for the blog.
Yes.
You know, they didn't even have to come up with a question for an interview if they didn't want to. They didn't have to come up with a guest post topic. I had them all listed there. They could email me back and say, I want this one. And they get free content for their blog, as long as I got a link to my website, a link to the Amazon page, and they agreed to cross-post their review on Goodreads and Amazon or wherever. So yeah, I sent out those emails. I got a lot of replies. I sent out digital arcs of Heart of Mist, got people excited. And yeah, that sort of started to snowball. I think one of the other things is I wasn't overly obvious about the fact that the book was independently published, because that to me wasn't, you know, a selling point. I had paid a lot of money for the cover. I'd paid a lot of money for the editing. This was a professionally created product, and it was just as valuable and as valid as a traditionally published book. And so, you know, maybe it was sneaky, I don't know, but I didn't really profess that it was self-published. Like I even had an imprint set up, Tarlin Press. So that had its own website and, you know, its own bio and all sorts of things. So yeah, I think what worked in my favor back then, particularly because, you know, the stigmas against indie publishing were pretty strong back then. And, you know, there's, especially having come from a traditional publishing space in terms of where I'd gone to uni and all of that stuff, I was very aware of that. And so I think it helped that I didn't sort of declare that this was an indie published book. And also a lot of people just assumed that it was traditionally published. And I even get emails now where I'm much more now like super open that I'm indie published and that sort of stuff. But, you know, emails now being like, oh, who's your publisher? How can I get in touch with your publisher? And I'm like, that's me. But so yeah, I did that big outreach campaign, and yeah, I didn't do any advertising. I might have like boosted a Facebook post or something, but my knowledge about advertising wasn't what it is now. And yeah, so like, I think it just sort of started to snowball with all the blogs. And, you know, you've got a blog, but that blogger has an Instagram account or a Twitter account. You know, they've got a big list on Goodreads, and, you know, so it'll, yeah, I think snowballing is the best way to describe how that all happened.
But a huge amount of work into
Yes.
going into make
yeah.
the initial snowball though,
Yeah.
Helen. Like,
Yeah,
kudos
absolutely.
to you.
I mean, two things I get out of that is definitely not sneaky, because I think that you used everything you had in the way of your previous knowledge of businesses. I mean, that took time. Your study took time. That's worth it. And like you say, you've paid your dues with the study, and also the fact that you put in that financial investment into your product. So it is a professional product.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also the fact that I had a launch at a bookstore like this, and that wasn't really like a financially savvy decision. Hosting a physical launch cost money in terms of it's in a bookstore, so the bookstore takes 40% off the RRP of anything that you sell. You've got to put on food and drink and, you know, organize the event itself, chase up RSVPs and, you know, get everything to the bookstore, pack everything up after the event, you know, write a speech, write a run sheet for the event. But I think the fact that I had one, and I had my sister's kind of vaguely into photography, so she was like kind of running around with a DSLR taking pictures, and you know, the fact that I had this physical launch at a bookstore that was very well known in that area sort of lent a bit of kind of validation or prestige. And then you've got all the content from that book launch, like the photos, like people tagging you in posts and stuff on social media, that makes it look like it's this professional event. And you can like, I still use pictures from that first book launch in my social media today, so it's kind of evergreen in that respect, and you can just recycle.
But you didn't do that again? You didn't have a physical book launch for the rest of the books in the series?
Yeah, I did. I did for Reign of Mist, and then by the time War of Mist came out, I'd moved to New Zealand and I went back to Sydney for the launch of that. And yeah, like I think the physical book launches sort of operate on a slight loss, really, in terms of the money that you've got to put in for food and drink and all of that stuff, and then you know, the loss on the book profit margin because the bookstore's selling it. But then the bookstore also kept the books and sold them, you know, just on a normal trade day or whatever. And I think all 3 times I had a launch there, that book that week was the #1 bestseller in the store. So those, like, even though you're not making a huge profit on the event itself, I think for me, the 3 times that I'd done them, they sort of paid for themselves in terms of content, word of mouth, you know, just sort of generating that buzz that you want around a book launch.
I also think there must be something in terms of your mindset around that too. Like, that's what appeals to me about it. It's like, I've edited it professionally. I've got this amazing cover. I'm a professional author, and I'm going to have this amazing event to show how proud I am of my books and my, you know,
exactly. And that's what I was going to say. Like, it's also a celebration of how much bloody work you've done.
Exactly.
And the fact that you get to be there surrounded by people who know how much work you've put in, or, you know, by the time I launched War of Mist, so when I launched the first one, Heart of Mist in 2017, and I think this is quite similar for a lot of authors, you know, that first one, you're surrounded by your friends and your family, and they're all like, oh my God, you're an author, you've published a book. By the time the third one came around, I looked around and there weren't nearly as many friends and family, but what had happened was it was bogged out by actual readers. And
those are the people.
Exactly. That's a massive thing. That's not just, grandma buying a book because, you know, that's a nice thing to do for your granddaughter. It's someone, you know, I had one reader travel from the Philippines to be there. I had people travel from Melbourne. So that was a big, sort of moment for me. You know, and you get to sign your books and, you know, dress up and have some champagne after a year or 2 of like working on something. So yeah, it's definitely, I think, despite that you might not make a big profit on a book launch, if you've got the time and the finance to do it, I think it does offer a whole bunch of other benefits that you can't really measure in terms of money. Yeah,
definitely.
It can solidify where that book's placing is in Amazon and push you forward, push those sales forward to give you a long tail.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that you're publishing, it was 1 book a year, wasn't it? Around the 1 year annually, like 2017, 2018, 2019 for that series. Is that about right? And so,
and then in 2020, I published a collection of short story prequels. So it was basically 1 a year, give or take.
But with the work that you're doing to put that on and to do your outreach and all of that, you actually need that time. Like, you couldn't be doing this every 3 months because Helen would a ball on the floor. You know, we wouldn't be speaking to her. She'd be jelly.
Exactly. And you definitely around those times, like, I was incredibly burnt out. And I mean, the first Heart of Mist, I think I worked part-time as a social media coordinator, copywriter. So I was working 3 days a week in an office somewhere, and then writing and publishing Heart of Mist on the side of that. And then, so I was incredibly burnt out around launch time of Heart of Mist. And then even Reign of Mist and War of Mist, like I was a full-time author, and you're just as burnt out. Like I think potentially when you're a full-time author, you have just this voice in the back of your head that's saying, you can always do more, you can always do more, you're not working hard enough, sort of thing. So
ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? That's an insidious voice.
Yeah. You don't need a day off.
No.
Don't even think about sitting down.
You're watching TV. Oh, you can answer some emails. Oh, you can do this while you do something else.
Yeah. So did you have a newsletter? Do you do any of those other kinds of things? Do you have a Facebook group, that kind of, or page?
So one of the things that Mark Dawson's course is very like adamant about is having a newsletter. That was a big part of my strategy. So prior to Heart of Mist launching, I wrote a couple of prequel short stories that would then eventually go into Dawn of Mist, which I published in 2020. But yeah, so in order to gain subscribers, pretty much the only thing I did was I had social media accounts. So I have a Instagram, a Twitter, and a Facebook. I don't have a Facebook group. I found Facebook very hard to get followers on. Instagram, I think, is where I do best. But basically, I didn't really advertise my newsletter anywhere except social media. And so I think I must have had less than 2,000 subscribers when I launched Heart of Mist. And then basically at the back of the ebook of Heart of Mist, there's a sign up link to then I'll get your free prequels, and then you sort of go into an automation sequence from there. And that's what I've then done with all my books. They have that at the back. And that's been the best way really to get subscribers. Like in the last year, I've dipped my toes into more like sort of indie methods, like of the newsletter swaps and the book funnel promotions. And I've done one list builder, but I've definitely found that the engagement just isn't there if they didn't get there organically. So yeah, that's something I've tried. I might try and experiment with a little bit as I go on, but yeah, the best way has been with lead magnets or reader magnets. So even with my new series, I've written 3 free prequel novellas that you can get on my website. And so basically you sign up for them, you get sent one a day, and you get put into a sequence like that. And then, yeah, basically my plan for when A Layer of Bones launches, going to have a similar thing at the back of that, and at the front of it, you know, get the 3 free prequels to that, you know, precede the events in this series. And, you know, I think I've done it much better this time around. Like I've got more forethought into it. I was writing these prequels after I'd written at least the first book. And so I can leave a lot more breadcrumbs and, you know, make it a lot more clever basically. But yeah, I'm going to have the link to them in the back of the book. I'm also thinking of including a volume of like author diaries. So I keep like a diary of my process basically as I'm writing these books. And I just thought, you know, I would love it if my favorite author sent me their diary of like how hard it was to write the book that I really like. So yeah, I think I might include that. So the 3 free prequels, and then a volume of author diaries, and hopefully that, you know, gets a whole bunch of people on my list as well.
Awesome.
Well, I'd like to say that when you say that you're only writing a book a year, it's actually not true, because you're doing all this other work, which does take time because you still have to edit it, right?
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And you have to get a cover if you're putting them all together at some stage. So I think that's brilliant. And also the fact that you had 2,000 subscribers, I think many of our listeners starting out would be absolutely delighted with that number. So,
yeah, it definitely wasn't much. It definitely wasn't much. And I think I was sending only 1 email a month. I'm only this year, so 3 years or 4 years actually after that first one, I'm starting to experiment with doing 2 emails a month, which that feels quite a lot to me, like having to actually write that content and come up with what I'm going to put in it and stuff. But yeah, back then, 1 email a month, less than 2,000 subscribers for the launch. And yeah, it went well. So
Yes.
Fantastic.
Sorry, how many subscribers do you have now, if you don't mind telling us?
Still not that many. I think I've got about 4.5. I've done in the last like not 6 months, or maybe about 6 months, I did a big clean where, you know, I got rid of anybody who hadn't opened an email in the last 6 months. So I lost quite a few doing that. But, you know, then the benefit is that your engagement goes up and you hopefully don't end up in too many spam boxes or promotion tabs. And so it's a massive thing that I'm working towards this year, which is why I've written these 3 novellas. I do want to get a really solid email list because, yeah, I mean, it's been 4 years and I've only doubled my list. I would like to have a very like substantial list, you know, by the end of the year, and hopefully the strategy using the prequels and whatnot, that'll help. And also, I think I should probably mention that with the prequels I did for the Army Chronicles, I didn't do covers for them. They were just PDFs. So with the ones I'm doing now, I'm commissioning covers because I want to try and test some ads and things to them. Also, you know, obviously people are far more likely to sign up for something if it looks pretty. But just back then, I was bootstrapping it. I didn't have the budget to make covers, and I did 9 prequel stories.
9? Wow.
Yeah.
How many words in your prequel? How many words in a prequel?
They crept up and up. I think the original ones, they were only about 3,000 odd words, and then by the end they were closer to 8. And then the ones that I've done this year, they're all about 14,000 words. But I very much did the more recent ones as like novellas rather than short stories, because the ones for the Oromir Chronicles, they were just short stories, and they were a way for me to like get to know the characters and, you know, flesh out events in their pasts that then I could sort of use in the main series. And, you know, there are a lot of benefits to doing them, but they were much shorter, and they always did go through a copy editor who I paid. But yeah, I didn't do the covers or anything because I just didn't have the budget. And also it's just another thing that then you've got to go back and forth with someone about the brief, about tweaks and stuff. And if you put that in like 9 times, that's quite a lot.
It is. Absolutely.
So what other so you had this newsletter, you did this amazing amount of work with talking to the bloggers and getting reviews. What was there anything else that you were doing through the launches of your the first 3 books?
No, I don't think so. Like I had my social media accounts, so I was I'd always do like a big fuss about the cover reveal. You know, as I went on through the years, people would start to reach out to me and be like, oh, can we be involved in the cover reveal? So, you know, Instagrammers would then get sent the cover early, and they could create like a graphic that then they could post on cover reveal day and just sort of generate a bit of buzz. I think as the years went on, I started to learn Amazon ads, but it's something that I haven't really, like I managed to make a profit on them and stuff. I think also now, because my books are quite old in the scheme of things, like Heart of Mist was from 2017. I'm wondering if I'm starting to reach the end of like the lifespan of that series in terms of, you know, finding new readers for it and stuff.
Never. There's millions of people out there waiting to read your books.
I promise you haven't.
Yeah.
Just the ads, like they just bog me down. Like I'm not big on the data and the checking them every day. And like I definitely got them to work probably around Reign of Mist sort of time. I got them working. At the moment, I mean, I'm also just not putting the time in. I'm not putting the time in at the moment because I'm sort of, you know, I'm organizing basically with the A Layer of Bones, which comes out in July. So just this morning, I'm doing the outreach for the cover reveal, which is happening next month. And so that's a lot of back and forth communication with bookstagrammers and stuff. I've just realized I need to revise the outline of the third book because I was halfway through writing it, and then I'm sort of hitting a wall, and I've realized the outline isn't specific enough. I'm just about to get feedback on book 2 from my beta readers, so I've got to do that. And so the idea of like going through Amazon ads is just like, I can't be bothered.
I hear you.
So
So do we hear you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So with this new series, are you going to publish it? So you mentioned that you've already written like, well, 2.5 of it. Are you going to come out with them fast? Are you going to release them faster, or are you going to maintain your one a year kind of schedule?
The plan is to release them faster. Basically, my strategy was, so last year I released Dawn of Mist, which is the collection of short stories. So I'd already written 9 of those as I was writing the first 3 in the Oromir Chronicles. And then I added another 7 to that, exclusive to the collection. So I published that, and to me, because it had spanned the course of the trilogy, like writing it took 3 odd years to write it, but it didn't feel like I'd written a book, like a full-length novel. I didn't have that fatigue at the end of Dawn of Mist. And so my strategy was publish that in April. Then in October, I published the omnibus, all 4 books all together, just ebook only. And in my mind, I was like, well, that's bought me a year. That's bought me a year of just writing time and, you know, really immerse myself in this new series. So yeah, I wrote Layer of Bones, which is the first book of a quartet. That is pretty much ready to go. So that comes out in July, and book 2's already done. I'm halfway through book 3. I've got to revise book 2. But yeah, the whole point in sort of giving myself this year, like I called it a year off. It definitely wasn't a year off.
No,
but
absolutely
a year
not.
off publishing a full-length book. And so, yeah, I bought myself this time in the hope that then I would be able to release at least the first 2 books closer together. So at the moment, the dream is to publish A Layer of Bones in July and then potentially the second one in October. That feels quite ambitious, but I would really love to see how my income changes if I'm able to publish closer together. Because publishing a year apart, like I've done really well from 2017, 18, 19, and then 20, it started to dip a little bit. And I made the mistake in thinking that Dawn of Mist, which isn't a full-length novel, was going to tie me over until the release of my next full-length novel. Basically, I'd conditioned my readers to expect a big, chunky, full-length fantasy book from me. And Dawn of Mist also, because it's a prequel collection, doesn't get listed on the Amazon series page, which is really annoying. And so I think I've lost a lot of visibility just in not having that on the series page. So yeah, I basically bought myself a bit of time in order to get as far ahead in the new series as possible to then try and release it closer together. But I won't have any idea of how that's going to go until the end of this year, I don't think.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Oh, she's a crapshoot always.
I was going to say there's the realm of possibilities.
I
prefer to believe that it's going to go amazingly well.
I would like to think that. I think just because I'm sort of just starting this big outreach process, which I haven't done to this extent since I launched Heart of Mist, because, you know, after doing that one, it's almost like a copy paste job with the following series. Like whoever liked the first one is going to continue on pretty much. And so it's sort of a built-in marketing chain and outreach chain. But now I'm like at the start of a new series. I'm getting all the nerves, I'm getting all the self-doubt that I had back then. It's almost like every day I'm like, oh my God, I've forgotten how to do this because it was 4 years ago, or has it changed? You know, I've definitely noticed that like I've gone to my original list of book bloggers who I contacted for Heart of Mist. Half of those blogs don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And so that's quite scary, you know, that this part of my marketing strategy has changed quite drastically. And I think overall book blogging isn't the same as it was in 2017. Like, you know, there's TikTok, which I've got no idea about. There's,
clueless,
you know, Instagram and all of these things, I think have sort of taken over the blog space more. So it's basically about adapting that original marketing strategy to suit now. But yeah, I've definitely got this voice in my head that's, you know, second guessing every time I make a decision, which is nerve-wracking.
I think we all get that, don't we? I mean, sometimes you just stop in the middle of the day and you just stand there going, what am I doing? Why is what's going, you know, like it's just, it's a constant thing, even after 35 books or whatever, you know, I still get it constantly self-doubting.
Are you downgrading the number of books?
Good to know it doesn't end.
I don't know how many books it is. Sorry,
You got like 50
over
books.
40.
I don't know
Anyway.
what it is. But I'm just explaining. I just sent my put it off for its second edit last night, and I sent it to a couple of people who read it as well. And as I sent it, I'm just like, oh well, I just don't know. You know, I think it could be a load of crap if we're being honest. And rah. And they came back straight away and went, oh, we're going down that road again, are we? You know, like
they know you
it's
so
a process,
well.
right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's another thing too with you having such a successful series is that people are probably hanging out for this next series. Oh, by the way, I meant to ask you, have you decided that first series is stopping at that 3? Like, there's no chance of you putting in another book at some stage? No?
I think when I finished it, I definitely thought like that's the end. I should mention that the new series is set in the sort of same universe, megaverse, and like so there's a couple of breadcrumbs for people who liked the first series. You know, they'll recognize place names or accents or magical creatures. And it's just sort of like I suppose it's my way of just giving like a little nod to the people who've been there since the beginning. And I think my plans are to continue to explore that world. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, you certainly don't have to have read the Oromir Chronicles in order to read A Layer of Bones and vice versa. There's definitely, like, they're completely standalone separate series. But, you know, it's, especially with fantasy worlds, like, they're so extensive. You work so hard on the different magic systems, the different, you know, creatures and people and blah, 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 that I've sort of, at least for this series and then the next series that's after this one, I've got a vague idea for what comes next. That'll probably be set in the same like megaverse as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, keeping that connection going.
I think so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you keep in touch with readers? Do you have a connection to, you know, a core group of fans, or like do people, I guess it's your newsletter, do you have that kind of outreach that you do?
I mean, the newsletter is definitely where I try and keep it like very community focused. Like, that's where I give, you know, cover reveals, teasers, the prequels for the next book. You can only get them via the newsletter. So I try and make it very exclusive, you know, first people to see anything. And I do have a lot of like back and forth with, I guess, core fans. You know, they're the people that reply if I send a teaser or if I do the cover reveal, and they show their support that way. I don't have a Facebook group. That's something like I just find Facebook a bit much sometimes. Like, I'm in a lot of author groups there. It's also living abroad. That's also how I talk to my friends and family, you know, Facebook Messenger and Facebook calls and stuff. And so, yeah, I've been quite hesitant to create like a readers group there. I think with Heart of Mist, I did create a little group of bloggers, and it was called like the Mist Dwellers or the Mist Tribe or something like that. And, you know, I tried to keep engagement going and, you know, share snippets and stuff with them as like a reward for being involved in like the marketing team essentially. But that sort of fizzled out a little bit, so I didn't really get back into that. Instagram is also another place where I'm quite active, and readers engage a lot with my posts and stuff, and it's always like really nice seeing people's photos of my books. And the bookstagrammers do such a beautiful job of like setting up books with props and all sorts, so I get a lot of like engagement there. But I think for the most part the newsletter is definitely sort of the core sort of tribe and where that interaction happens the most.
Yeah, that makes sense. So have you got like just some general or any other tips or any bits of information for someone who's out there kind of listening to you going, oh my God, I didn't know it was possible to have a successful career on one book a year? Like, is there any other pieces of advice on how you've done it so successfully?
I think definitely prioritizing your newsletter and making the people who sign up to that feel special. I think that's really important. I think if you're publishing one book a year, you also have to be aware that you've got to maintain that hunger for your work and that interest and that, passion for it. So that's where things like, sending out prequel stories works really in your favor. Like, so I think I sent out 3 before Heart of Mist was even out, and so I sort of built up that buzz and that intrigue about the series. And then I think in the fact that I sort of modeled my marketing around a traditionally published book, there wasn't that initial expectation that the next one would be out the following month. Like, people know when they buy a traditionally published book that they might not see the next book in that series for at least a year. So that sort of worked in my favor there, but I was very aware that I needed to maintain that interest in between books. So that meant, posting multiple times a week on social media and, finding the balance between promotion and, sharing other people's content or sharing content that, rewarded other people rather than was just like, buy my book. And then, sending out a newsletter. And I think, if you're only publishing once a year and you're just starting out, I think sending an email once a month is more than enough. You don't want to annoy people. And also, you've got to be wary of the fact that every time you send an email, you've got to write that email. You've got to format it. You've got to schedule it. So there's a lot of work involved in just maintaining a newsletter, I think. But so sending out an email once a month in between books, building up to the cover reveal, building up to the next short story release, even asking your readers' opinions about stuff. What do they want from you in your newsletter? Who are they shipping in your series? Who do they want to get together? And just try and build up that engagement, that interest, and maintain that interest in between books. Because by the time you're releasing that next book, they haven't forgotten about you, and hopefully you've built up that anticipation for when that book comes out, to the point where that book comes out, they buy it automatically and they want to take a day off work to read it. That's sort of what I try and build up to.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Helen, are you publishing wide or are you Amazon exclusive?
I'm in KU, yeah.
Okay.
That's especially for YA fantasy, from what I've seen, that's the way to go. And my books are quite chunky. I mean, they're all over 100,000 words, so that works in my favor with KU as well.
Definitely.
Do you know off the top of your head how many reviews you have on your first book? Like, did you?
On my first book, like currently?
Well, yeah,
I think it's about 480.
Wow.
I think it's about 480 or so. And that's from 2017. So it's had a long time to build those up. I think from memory, my aim when I launched Heart of Mist was to launch with a minimum of 25 reviews. And I might have just been under that. But yeah, I had a soft launch where I sent the Amazon link to all the people who'd agreed to review the book and said, can you please cross-post your review to Amazon as soon as possible, and especially by hard launch day, which is this. And then hard launch day came around, and I think I must have had at least about 20. So then obviously when you're promoting the book, it's got that social proof on it. And particularly if you've done that outreach campaign well, and you've made sure that everybody you're targeting is a fan of that genre. And particularly like the thing I always come back to is Throne of Glass, which is a traditionally published YA fantasy novel, which was huge at the time. And my book is quite similar to Throne of Glass in terms of like the target age and the female protagonist who's very flawed and all that sort of stuff. So pretty much I reverse engineered blogs from that. So I Googled Throne of Glass reviews. And if somebody had posted a Throne of Glass review on their blog in the last 6 months, I was like, you're definitely part of my target audience. Their blog went in a spreadsheet and I emailed them when I did the big outreach campaign.
That's a really good tip. That's great.
Yeah, that is awesome.
So what would you say your audience would be? How would you describe your audience? Would it be younger? I'm guessing Instagram would absolutely reach them. Probably TikTok too, just saying, Helen.
Yeah, I know. I've only just started finding the courage to get in front of the camera myself. So I've done a couple of Instagram videos, which I really don't like. It's just not me. Yeah, I'm not a fan of getting in front of the camera, and
no, neither.
You know, watching the video afterwards, I'm super critical, and it's just not a fun place for me to be mentally. Yeah. And so TikTok just terrifies the shit out of me. I don't want to.
I don't want to borrow that.
Yeah, exactly. So I know you're right. It probably is a fantastic place, and you know. So Throne of Glass is by an author called Sarah J. Maas, and she's just released a new book, A Court of Silver Flames, and that is all over TikTok and Instagram at the moment. It's all I see. So basically, like that's where my audience is, TikTok and Instagram. But yeah, I would say in terms of like a kind of reader profile, I say YA, but I've been getting so many emails lately from people in their 60s and 70s who are reading these books and, you know, identifying with the characters. I think Oromir Chronicles in particular is maybe a bit of a broader audience because it's a 4-person point of view narrative, and they're not all young adults. So the main protagonist, I think, is 19, but then there's like a mid-30-year-old dude. There's a 20-year-old you know, head of a female warrior society, and then there's an 8-year-old boy as well, and they're sort of all interwoven and all the threads sort of come together. But yeah, I guess my ideal reader is anybody 14 up. I mean, definitely mainly women, and that's because my books are very much female focused. There's all the main protagonist is always a woman, and she's flawed. I try to make sure that, you know, there's not this perfect character who's beautiful and feminine, but also tough, and also can wield a sword, and also can bake a cake. And, you know, that's just it's not really my cup of tea. So, you know, that I try and make my female characters as complicated as possible. Like, they've all got their own issues. They make mistakes over and over again throughout the books. So yeah, any person who likes stories like that, and they're very much action packed and fast paced. I hope anyway. Yeah, and I very much want my books to be addictive. So that's sort of where I'm going with that. Yeah, I've gone off on a tangent now.
That's still great information. I love that. I mean, we all want our books to be addictive, but that's
of course, yeah.
That's a really great kind of thing to have in your kind of, I don't know, your aims, your goals. Yeah.
Well, I think we're coming up for the hour now, Toodles.
Yeah.
No, any other questions that anyone has?
No, I think that's great.
She's covered it all.
Huge amount of information.
Yes, it's
Certainly
awesome.
wish you all the success with this new series as well.
Absolutely.
It's going to do great. It's going to be
Gonna
awesome.
do awesome.
I bloody hope so.
I'm just going to be waiting to see you on TikTok now.
So, so Helen, where can people find you if they want to go and buy all your books?
Well, the best place would probably be my my website, which is just www.helenscheuerer.com. I can give you guys a link because that last name, as you know, is a little bit problematic. So on my website, there's all the information about where you can buy my books. I mean, it's mainly on Amazon anyway. But my website is also where you can get free prequel novellas and such if that's something that you're after. And also, I suppose I'm most active on Instagram. If you wanted to check me out on Instagram, like I post a lot of sort of behind the scenes stuff of my author life. I also, post pictures of the pretty New Zealand mountains, and if I go on a hike and stuff like that. And yeah, it's also where I do my cover reveals and post snippets of reviews and snippets of works in progress and stuff. So yeah, I'm definitely most active on there. But if you want to find out more about me and my books, my website's probably the place to go.
Awesome. And soon to be on TikTok.
Yeah.
Make
sure to put those.
No pressure.
You know what you need, Helen? You need something like a cute kitten or a puppy and get them to do the TikToks. You know what I mean? Like they can be positioned on top of the book kind of thing or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure my partner would really appreciate that, me going out and buying a...
I just need it for
business expense. Business expense.
I was going to say.
I mean, it seems perfectly legitimate to me. I mean, I'm just saying.
What? So legitimate.
I think I'd be writing a lot less books. I wouldn't be publishing once a year. It might be every 2-3 years if I got a puppy, I think.
Yeah.
Funny.
Oh, that's awesome.
Awesome. And where can we be found, Char?
Well, we can be found at spargirlspodcast.com. We'll make sure that Helen's links are in the show notes as well. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Helen.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Awesome.
It's a great way to start the day.
Oh.
Yeah, it's great. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. We'll see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.